Welcome to the ROI Online podcast, Thibaud Clement.
Hi, Steve. Thanks for having me.
So, people that listen to this podcast, they're wondering why they should listen to this particular episode. And so here's the thing is that YouTube is really confusing. It's something that we all know that we need to take advantage of it. LinkedIn is confusing and we know that we should take advantage of it. And then we hear about these other platforms like TikTok, etc. And yet it's not clear. And yet you have a company, Loomly.com, and you come from this space. So tell us a little bit about why you're an excellent person to listen to and get clarity on this.
Okay, I'll try. I'll try. Yeah, well, so I do come from an advertising background, and I've basically been working in digital marketing for about 10 years. Uh, all of that time, I've been working with my spouse, Noemi. It's actually Loomly is the fourth company that we are building together. Before Loomly, we had an advertising agency. We were operating both in France, where our largest and most famous client was L'Oreal, and we were managing 5 brands for them in the luxury product division. And here in the US, where we were helping, fast-growing startups trying to, get more traction and more growth. And so there was one process, that was common, like to all those clients, big and small, French and American, no matter the vertical, is that we had to prepare, produce, and submit to them some content to publish on their social media accounts. And all of that, believe it or not, was happening through spreadsheets, in most of the time in Excel. And if you actually speak, with anyone who is actually doing or preparing like an editorial plan or an editorial calendar, they will tell you most probably that they use some kind of spreadsheet, maybe Excel, maybe Google Sheets, or some kind of evolved version. But the truth is, spreadsheets were not meant for that. They are terrific for numbers when you want to do like a profit and loss statement or business plan, but they are not great for media and text, let alone collaboration. And so that was a very repetitive process, time consuming and error prone. And so at some point, Noemi and I, we started like looking for alternatives and ways to improve that process. And we could only find online like two specific sets of tools. The first family of tools was basically what we could call generic project management software, which is great to organize collaboration within a team, but doesn't really cover the publishing workflow that marketing teams need, because once you have your content, you want to spread it online for everyone to see. And then there was another family of products, which was what we could call the social media schedulers. And those were terrific at actually spreading the content, but they were not helping you produce it. And so that's where we kind of identified like some kind of gap. And because we couldn't find a real solution that we wanted, we just started building it. I'm not an engineer. I graduated from 2 business schools, but I learned everything on my own. And by the end of 2015, I had a prototype up and running, which we started using with our clients. And we did not tell them it was our own product, because we wanted some honest feedback and not just like, yeah, good job guys,
Right.
go on. And they liked it. And so from there, we opened it up in public beta. And this tiny little product that I had just built it, not in my garage, it's not Silicon Valley, but in my living room, was getting some traction. And if we flash forward to today, we are now extremely lucky to serve over 7,000 marketing teams across the globe. And we are growing about 100% a year. So it's pretty exciting. And we now help all those marketing teams, manage their assets for social media in a library. We help them, we give them some ideas about, what to post. And we help them create those posts, build the visuals, create like some kind of mock-up so that you can preview what the post is going to look like before you actually publish it. And then we have an entire like team workflow where you can actually collaborate and say, hey, I love this post, no, there is a typo in this one, please change the image on that one, so that anything that goes out, that goes live, is actually on brand and, kind of telling the right story for your brand. And then, of course, you publish it and then you measure your success with analytics and you can respond to any comments you get. My point is to kind of, get to your initial question, is we are now integrated with Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, LinkedIn, Google My Business, YouTube, TikTok, Snapchat. So, and because, we have this kind of bird's eye view of like, everything that's happening on all those platforms with so many posts that go through our platform every month, we kind of have, some insights into kind of what's working, what's not, and where things are going in the future. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, totally. So in my book, I talk about, everybody's convinced they need to be posting on social media, but they don't know what to do. Um, Especially the clients that we work with, they're trying to run a business. They have 20 or less employees, and they have to figure out this confusing thing on social media. But they know there's some expectation that it can help them grow their business, and so they start throwing things against the wall. Hey, it's Veterans Day. Let's post a picture of Veterans Day, and then it's Dog Day. You grab little sissy and let's get a picture of her and get it posted. But there's not a real strategy behind it. And then there's this communication breakdown between the social media people that you're trying to get to help you and how to do it correctly. How does Loomly really start to address the strategy and where you want these people to go if they do click on a post? How do we know where to put them so that we can get a better value of this investment of energy?
Yeah. Um, this is very interesting because the first kind of question that you kind of raise is like, you want to post, you need to post, you don't really know what to say, and then you kind of like take things, kind of piecemeal, and you're like, oh, today is Veterans Day, I need to post about that, and then you kind of like the kind of the prime is when you do it like piecemeal and you don't have this kind of strategic view of what you are trying to say. It is correct that you may end up with kind of, like a series of posts that, are back to back and don't really mean anything, don't really tell a story. So the most important thing is, and it's actually probably the most underrated trick, but it's what we used to do as an agency, is that you don't want to be thinking at 9 a.m. about what you are going to be posting at 10 a.m.
Right?
That's a recipe for disaster. What you want to be doing instead is you want to sit down, you want to look at the upcoming months. So let's say we sit down today and we look at what December is going to look like, and we're like, okay, as a brand, what do I want to tell as a story in December? How am I going to talk about the holidays in the current context? Are there any specific milestones that I want to share? Are there any specific company-related events that I want to share? And are there some of those, date-related holidays that you're mentioning, Veterans Day or International Dog Day? What matters is it's not, that you should not be talking about those. It's that you should use those and leverage those to anchor your communication onto those and explain how you are relevant as a brand in this context. And so to kind of be like, very practical, again, if you sit down, you look at the upcoming months and you say, okay, what, am I going to tell as a story over 10 or 20 posts? Then, it's much easier, one, to go from, a blank page to an actual series of 20 posts that make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Two, it's much easier to actually tell a compelling story because you can see how, one post is going to build onto the others and kind of respond to the others. And three, when you do it like that, not only is kind of, the quality going to be better, but your efficiency is going to be better because it's much easier to look at your kind of, your calendar and say, I'm going to to publish those 20 posts. And you start by finding the ideas, and then you find the idea for all 20 posts. Then you go into the next stage, which is I'm going to actually craft the copy and find the visuals. And then, you go on to the next step, which is, okay, I'm going to preview all those in a sequence and see, what the story they are telling and submit them to my team to see, what they think about it. And I believe that, this is kind of leading me to the second part of your question, which is basically, how do you collaborate? how do you maximize efficiency, and how do you kind of implement best practices as a team.
Yeah.
So, well, that's the thing. If you have, done your work, and you have, kind of created your content ahead of time, and you have those 20 posts for the month of December, well, then you can, invite your team and say, hey, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? And what we tend to see from the top performing brands is that they usually have one thing in common, is that it's actually not a one-person job. It's like a team working together. And most of the time with people that you may not expect to be involved in a marketing process. For instance, one of our largest clients, that I would rather not disclose their name because they are publicly traded. But because they are publicly traded, what they need is to involve the CFO in the process, because anything that goes out, on social media can potentially affect the stock price.
Mm-hmm.
So this is extremely important, and it's not only for large companies that are publicly traded. Even if you are a smaller company, but maybe you are in a regulated industry, or you want to make sure that you don't publish anything that could create a liability for your brand, or just because you want to be accurate in everything you say, it's a best practice to work in a cross-functional collaboration fashion, where maybe you invite the product people, because they will be able to explain a great feature that you may have not thought about as a social media manager. You can invite the salespeople, because they may be able to give you some insights about what people are saying on the field, or question that they have and that you can answer in your post, and so on and so forth. You can also invite the HR people. We are going to talk about LinkedIn, so employer branding is extremely important. So yes, you need to invite the HR people to collaborate on this process, because they will tell you, yes, that makes sense in the context of our employer brand, and so on and so forth. So all this to say that it's not a one-person job. Work, kind of ahead of time and in batch. Involve as many different skills as you can, and this will make the whole process more efficient and more effective.
So in my book, I talk about how actually this is a legitimate business process that we're talking about. Okay. It used to be, and you can imagine small companies with 20 or less employees, they're trying to get something out there because they see other brands doing it, and your clients or your customers are expecting you to do it. But it's like, it's oh, it's just another thing we're going to tick off a task. But what I really want these heroes, these entrepreneurs to know is that this is a legitimate business process. Well, what that means, you have to set up a strategy. You have to have a process and a system and a communication for you to take into consideration HR or the marketing or the sales, so that this actually moves the needle for the business some way. Is the tool that Loomly, that you've invented, is that a process-based tool that helps you shortcut all these things that you usually would have to put
Yes,
together in some Frankenstein system?
absolutely, exactly. As I was explaining, we want to cover the collaboration part. We want to cover the publishing part. When you use Loomly, first, for instance, if we kind of go through the process, what you start with is you have a library where you can manage all your assets. So first, you don't need to have like Dropbox or anything where you have to share your files. No, everything's in one central place. You have your photos, your videos, your links, your notes, whatever you want. All these kind of intelligence and brand assets that you may have, you can have them here at the ready. So that's number one. And on top of that, and that's kind of a pretty neat feature, is if you don't have any of those assets, we are actually integrated with some platforms like Unsplash and Giphy, and you can actually pull down, import, some assets from those platforms for free. So even if you don't have like a beautiful photograph or like, I don't know, a sunrise or a sunset for your inspirational quote, well, you can just put it down in like 1 second, 2 clicks, and it's free. So that's one thing. We help you, organize the assets. Two, we provide you with some ideas about what to post, and that's kind of the next step into the process. So we tell you about those funny days, those funny social media holidays you are mentioning, but we also piggyback on Twitter trends to tell you what is trending. And we also kind of, let you connect some RSS feeds into your calendar so that, if you have a blog, for instance, then any kind of new blog post that you publish will be kind of fed into your calendar to be transformed into a post. And you can also add your very own custom post ideas. Like, I don't know, if it's the 20th anniversary of your company, or if you just, pass like a revenue milestone or anything that you want to share and celebrate, you can actually input it into there. And then from there, so you have assets, you have ideas, you craft your post. And that's where kind of, Loomly really helps you, because the way you create a post in Loomly is you actually have what we call post builder, which is a step-by-step wizard that takes you by the hand and tells you, here's what you need to do here, and here's what you need to do there to go from that idea to a completed post. And finally, to kind of go about get down to really your question, we have what we call post view, where you can preview the post, and you can, from post view, you can assign a post to your collaborators to say, hey, can you look into that, please? You have a state, so the post can be in draft, in pending approval, approved, or scheduled if it has been scheduled. And you can leave comments. You can say, hey, can we change this or that? Can we, I don't like that post. Can we actually cancel it? We even have a canceled state. And so you have a history of all of that, a history of all your changes, so that the workflow is actually, kind of tracked. And then from there, you publish it, you receive a notification for, when you get like a kind of, like a comment, a mention, or a message. And all those you can also assign to your collaborators, so that, you can say, oh, this is a question I don't know how to answer. I'm going to assign, John, who is in sales. So this is also kind of the collaboration part. And then you have the final part, which is the analytics, because you mentioned it's a process. We want to move the needle. So you have an entire analytics dashboard that helps you report on your progress, see your growth, and see what is working and what is not. On top of that, we are actually in the process of releasing a pretty cool new feature that is called custom workflow. And it's actually taking everything I just explained to a whole new level, because it allows you to determine some rules. So for instance, you can determine some rules where you say, as soon as I create a post and it's becoming pending approval, I want it to be assigned to John and Diane automatically, so that I don't even have to click the button. So that anytime you create a post and you need it to be approved, then John and Diane will receive a notification telling them that they need to come in, see it, and approve it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a pretty cool new feature. And another thing that you can do is you can also say, I want to enforce some kind of limits on, who needs to actually approve a post before it can go live. We call those guards. And the idea is that, we can say, okay, this has been approved by Thibaud, but it cannot actually be scheduled until John and Diane have approved it. So that, you also have some kind of security and safety net. So yes, I'm tempted to say that it does address this workflow and process approach that you were referring to.
So the traps of social media to me are, first, time wasting if you're not doing it right. Then we've managed social media for clients, but if you misspell a word like you or your, and you put the wrong version of that, the client it can really it can penalize you just because of a small little mistake. For whatever reason, they put so much weight on what you do on social media, which conveys there's this big expectation of it. But then let's say you get it posted really perfect and it's out there, then there's the whole interactive side that's usually lost or not taken advantage of. And so there's a lot of ways to waste a lot of money, not do it right, and not take advantage of it. And you can't afford to hire an army of people to do it right. That's really frustrating for small brands.
Yeah. I understand, and that's why you want to be as efficient as you can, and see and like you said, you want to have a process and a workflow where who is involved and who needs to do what and when. And well, it turns out that Loomly kind of supports you in that. But even if you don't use Loomly, that's what you should have. You should have this process where you know who is supposed to create the post, who is supposed to approve them, with some kind of tracking of who said yes when. Because like you say, let's say there is a typo, but like, did the client approve it or not? If the client approved it, there was a typo, but they didn't even catch it either. So this way, you have some kind of tracking safety net and liability management system, I would say. And this is very important. And then for what you mentioned, like responding to any engagement and collaboration, engagement and interaction that you receive from your content, which is kind of the goal. Posting is not the goal. Building
Right.
your brand is, interacting with your audience is, and growing this kind of trust and momentum around your brand is. So it should be clearly defined who is supposed to do that. And then again, you can do it organically. You can use a tool that kind of automate it for you and assigns you tasks that you need to perform. But the truth is, what matters is who is in charge of what and when.
So it's like, here's the other thing that's really a gotcha. Let's say you do have a good social media person, you do have a good strategy and a process and the sign-offs. One post has to be formatted in multiple platforms. When you think
Yeah.
LinkedIn has its idiosyncrasies, YouTube,
Yeah.
TikTok. We're going to even talk about TikTok, and all these. How does Loomly help you handle all these multiple formats that you need to really avoid a bunch of gotchas of doing it wrong?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question. And so in Loomly, I was explaining earlier that we have built this feature called Post Builder, and so it takes you by the hand through the creation process or the production process of your post. Step two in that process. So step one is basically defining, like, finding the idea and choosing the date. Step two is selecting the channels you are going to publish your post on. And so, you may select, like, Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, for instance. And like you say, those platforms have different requirements, and the usage is different, and the expectations of users are different. So the way we have built kind of the next steps of Post Builder is based on how we used to handle that part of the process before in the famous or infamous spreadsheet. The way we used to do it is we would have one central theme, one central idea for a post that would, be kind of replicated for each channel and slightly tweaked. We should say fine-tuned, because you are probably going to post the same thing on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, but maybe on Facebook it's going to be a bit longer. On Twitter is going to be shorter, maybe with hashtags, and on LinkedIn it will have to maybe have a more formal tone. But the underlying idea that you are sharing is roughly the same. Otherwise, it's just a different post. And so the way we have built Loomly is so step one, ID and date. Step two is selecting the channel. Step three is defining what we call generic content, which is content that is going to be common to all the channels that you have selected. And it's in terms of copy and assets. But then step four is where it gets really interesting, is what we call the fine-tuning step. And so you are going to get, like, a mockup for Facebook, a mockup for Twitter, a mockup for LinkedIn that is generated automatically based on the generic content. And then from there, you can tweak it for each one. So no copy and paste, no need to kind of, like, upload several times the same file. No, you are here and you can check everything for each channel. We let you know if your post is too long on Twitter. We let you know if your image is too heavy on LinkedIn, and these kind of things, so that when you are fine-tuning each post and you are ready to save your post, you are confident that it's going to get posted as it should on each platform and customized for each platform.
So that leads us to the next gotcha, is like each of these platforms have algorithms and they change every day.
Yeah.
And so there's great recommendations on when's the best time to post on this platform, like the worst time to post on the other.
Mhm.
How does Loomly, or how does one that has a small team, become proficient at understanding that and taking advantage of an ever changing
Yeah.
environment.
So there are two things that we do to help you with that. The first thing, it's not data driven in the sense that it's not based on your own account, but it's based on studies and experiments and information that we have. And so is what we call post optimization tips. So we have those, general best practices that we know. You probably have seen studies online, but like indeed, like when is the best time to post, the best day to post, the ideal copy lengths, and this kind of thing. And so what we do is we have built those rules into our platform, and we have a very simple, green, orange, and red system where we tell you for each attribute of your post whether you're doing great per those best practices, or whether you can improve, or whether we recommend that you should really be doing something else. And so we do it for the days, we do it for the times, we do it for the copy lengths, we do it for the engagement markers that you include in your copy. So for instance, do you have like hashtags and at mentions and even like question marks or exclamation points, emojis, these kind of things that we know tend to lift engagement. And we also look at the kind of the format of your post. Like, is it a link? Is it a simple copy post? Is it like an image, a video? What is it? And so for each platform, we'll tell you, well, you can do it, but based on the best practices, here is, if you want to optimize your post, here's what you can try. So that's kind of the first thing. Same rule for everyone, not customized for each person. It's just kind of, general best practices. And then there is the other part, which is customized, and which is, in my sense, probably the most interesting, is that we have this analytics dashboard, which you can look, at any time. And it will tell you, for each post, like how many clicks and impressions and reach and engagement you got. And it will also rank your post, like you will have a top 3 and a flop 3 for each month. And so this actually tells you what your particular audience is more responsive to, so that the next time, so we have prepared our 20 posts for December. We have published those, and we are now at the end of December. We are looking at January. So what we do is, instead of just starting from scratch again, we go to the analytics dashboard and we look at the posts that work the best. What did we talk about? When did we publish them? How long were they? Were they images or like videos or links? And then we try to incorporate that kind of feedback into our next planning session for the 20 posts that we are going to publish in January. So it's kind of, an iterative process, and that's how you actually best learn to kind of adapt to the ongoing changes of the algorithms, because, well, like you say, they change all the time.
So Thibaud, let's talk about video now. When I think about probably the platforms that most companies are weak on or need to up their game, they're platforms that really reward video. That would be LinkedIn, that would be YouTube, that would be TikTok. And I have to confess, I haven't even been on TikTok, okay? There's like so many different platforms, I don't know which one to. I do think YouTube and LinkedIn, at least for what we do, is like the best place to focus. But then there's Instagram, and there's Facebook. And talk to us about how to look at video and how to take advantage of this opportunity. And it's a big competitive advantage if you get it right, right?
No, of course, it is. And for sure, to us, like, we are integrated with YouTube, we're integrated with LinkedIn and with most platforms out there. To us, YouTube is probably one of the most often overlooked platform, because creating videos is frightening. So there is this kind of barrier to entry where you're like, maybe I don't have the budget, or I don't have the skills to create some videos. But the thing is, the rewards are unbelievable for a couple of reasons. YouTube is one of the most visited websites on the planet after Google. So that's just for one. The reach is almost unlimited. It's probably, you know, half of the planet who is actually logging into YouTube. So it's huge. That's one. Two, YouTube is actually very interesting in the way it works because it does have some social features. So the algorithms, and you can subscribe to channel, and you can build like an audience, and you can have likes and dislikes and comments and these kind of things. That's true. But it also works and doubles as a search engine because you have many people who, you know, they are looking on how to do something, and they will either look it up directly on Google. But then, you know, we know that YouTube results actually show up very well in Google because, well, YouTube belongs to Google. Or two, they will actually go to YouTube and look straight up for a recipe or a DIY tutorial or how to do some home improvement, or you know, even like in the B2B sector, like how to do social media marketing or SEO or this kind of thing. So YouTube has this search engine power, which is tremendous, and which is like, you know, a huge advantage over some other social networks, because you're probably not going to go on other social networks and look for something like that. You're not going to go to Facebook and look for a recipe, or go to Twitter, and that's not how it works, but YouTube does. So that's a huge advantage. And the last thing, which is actually phenomenal to me, is that you have the ability to build on YouTube audiences of amazing sizes with huge engagement. If you just like look at some accounts that are like exploding, what you will see is that it took them some time to go from, you know, 0 to maybe 1,000, 100,000, a million subscribers. But then once they are there, it just like their growth is exponential. And that's, you know, related to the YouTube algorithm for sure, which tend to kind of, you know, push channels that, you know, have been publishing steadily and that, you know, are kind of, you know, reliable. So that's where it's interesting, because on YouTube you can actually build, you know, defensiveness by being, you know, by showing up and producing videos regularly. So to me, it's an amazing advantage to, like I said, have this amazing reach, have those search engine capabilities, and having this ability to build defensiveness over time with a massive audience, which, you know, on other platforms is getting more competitive.
So you're connected to all these platforms where you can publish into them. Obviously, you're probably receiving analytics and data and insights from that. What is your data revealing about LinkedIn and the best way to take advantage of LinkedIn?
Yeah, so we have to be careful about, you know, because it's not like we are kind of, you know, looking into our users' data or anything. All of that is private. But on LinkedIn, one thing that we consistently see here is that you have your company pages and you have your individual profiles. Interestingly, you know, those two work very well hand in hand, where, you know, on your company page, you will probably, you know, publish some very corporate content, and then on your individual pages, you can actually share your company page corporate content, but you can also, you know, share things about your career and your achievements and things like that. And it's actually, we have a blog post on our blog about that, where we actually explain that using thought leadership from one of your executives or founders and leveraging their individual profile is a pretty good hack to actually get even more exposure than just simply publishing through your company page. And that's, you know, it makes sense, because if you think about it, you're always happy to hear, you know, directly from the founder of a brand that you like, or the software that you use, or an agency that you want to work with. And so that makes it, you know, just more human. Yes, it's professional. Yes, it's B2B, but yes, it's also human. And that is, I believe, also in the current context, more important than ever.
Yeah, being human. It's like a competitive advantage now, just being human, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so what's one good question that people don't ask you that you wished you could be answering on this?
On like on social media.
Yeah, well, on obviously you designed Loomly to help people excel in this area, but
Yep.
there's usually like a question you wish people would ask you, but they don't.
Yeah. Well, the thing, is like everyone, is seem to be like trying to get there fast. Like they want to set up an account. I'm sure your clients, they're like that. Maybe they're not showing the most patience, and you know your podcast is ROI, right?
Mhm.
ROI online, and so ROI has to be here and now. The thing is, ROI is kind of a reward in the long term for building your brand. Meaning that it's not because you're just going to open up a Facebook page or Instagram account that all of a sudden you're going to go viral. And even if you go viral, it's going to last for 24 hours, and then you're going to be forgotten because another person is going to go viral. So the most important thing is, how do you build your brand over time? How do you stay relevant? And how you actually build this defensiveness that I was mentioning, because going viral is not defensiveness. Going viral is being lucky. And what you want is building this defensiveness, meaning that your audience is going to be interested in what you say because you take care of them, you publish great content that they like, and you show up. You're not like, I publish like 2 posts like the same day, and then I'm not here for a month. That's not what you want. What you want is regularity, periodicity, where you show up, you tell your brand story that resonates with your audience, and you are here consistently, and that's how you actually build an audience, and that's how you are rewarded. And so I think that the the most important question here, whether people want to ask it to me or not, is like, how do you build your brand on social media? And the answer is, you do it over time. That's the answer. If that makes sense.
So there's no shortcut. I mean, it's like that's like,
I don't think there is. I don't think there is.
yeah, I think just like in any domain, consistent,
Yeah.
strategic, long march. And most people give up after a little bit. And that's why it's a competitive advantage to do the long game. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like we say often that nothing beats perseverance. That's true. And so that's the first thing. But I also think, and that's again, that's after 10 years in the field, I really believe that consistency beats creativity every time. Because maybe you are a genius one day, you pour all your energy into this nice design, then you don't have any more stamina for the next one. And so again, it's not one beautiful picture or one nice social media post that's going to build your brand. What is going to build your brand is the emotion that you're going to create with your audience, and the fact that they're going to be happy to see a post from you, and that even more importantly, they are going to expect to see a post from you. And so that is something that you achieve with consistency, not like creative genius. So it's just sweat. That's what you should be putting into it.
So what's the platform that has most people are not taking advantage of right now other than YouTube? What's the strategy that it should be applied to that platform?
Well, you see, we mentioned LinkedIn, and I think that LinkedIn is extremely interesting. It's interesting for, of course, B2B marketers. So if you do sell products to other companies, because they are there, most of them are there. LinkedIn is already huge, and it keeps growing. So I think it's a phenomenal platform. And so it's also interesting for B2C. Um, you know, brands, because maybe they're not going to sell their product on LinkedIn because maybe it's not the place to do it, but they can still build their employer branding. And employer branding is actually extremely important. And it's, of course, it's important because you want to attract talents. And then once you hire those talents, you want to retain them, meaning you want them to be proud to be part of your team. And actually, involving your employees into sharing content on LinkedIn is actually one of the best growth hacks that you can think about. But it's also important for your customers, because when you know that such brand is one of the best companies to work for, it just contributes to your perception of the brand. And so maybe it's not going to trigger a sale right now, but it's going to actually maybe make you, more interested in whichever ad they are going to run next. And maybe it will also make you less price sensitive to whatever innovation they're going to launch. And so because you will be thinking about, yes, people are happy to work there. They are one of the best places to work. So they must be doing something right. And that in and of itself, it just, it doesn't only build the employer brand, it also builds just the actual brand, because you see value in what they do. And I think this is, extremely important, and actually for businesses of all sizes.
So where did your passion come for this industry? Why connecting all of these disparate things together and solving a problem that's never ending and always changing?
Well, that in and of itself is actually a pretty good reason. but it's I like to joke about the fact that Loomly is basically a love story. Like I said, I was I've been working with my spouse Noemi for 9 years, and so she was the one in charge of the spreadsheets. So I wanted to help her. I wanted to make her day and her job easier. So that's why I went into the code and built it. So I would say that's where my passion comes from. But then the real thing is, once you kind of scratch the surface of such a big problem that is, like you just said, never ending, then you are able to communicate with your clients and your customers, because we speak with over 200 customers every single day through customer support, and they all have my email address. I receive tons of emails every day, and I read them all, I respond to them all. So we have this constant feedback, and this kind of shapes our vision as we keep growing about where we need to take the product and the company, which features matter, which bugs do we need to fix, how can we improve the UI, all of these things. And as you have all those little data points every single day, it's like an impressionist painting. It kind of forms a very clear image. Once you have this clear image as an entrepreneur, it's really hard to forget about it. And all you want to do is basically go and achieve that vision. So that is a huge driver for us, for me, but for Noemi as well, because now that we have identified this pain point, and we have a pretty good idea of what people want, it would be pretty frustrating to go all the way and actually deliver it.
So what's the most surprising thing about social media to you now that you didn't expect 8 years ago, 6 years ago?
Probably to see my parents on it. But no, I think what is extremely interesting is to see how it kind of snowballed from something that was kind of a niche practice, into something so mainstream. And I think it's really interesting. I know there's a lot of noise about how like the negatives of social media, but and you are probably aware of all of them. But I think they also create great things. They enhance creativity, they unlock new opportunities, and they connect people. And I think that this is pretty amazing to me, that we live in the US, we have family in France, we can talk to them like they're in the next room. That's just so amazing. Like I said, we are a startup. We have 7,000 clients around the world. That's pretty amazing to me, the fact that and that's also part of social media, the fact that we can be based in the US and serve clients in Australia and in France and in Canada or Mexico. And I think that's pretty amazing to me. So social media is pretty inspiring in its market penetration rate, I would say.
All right, so just a couple of more questions. Which country, I could guess it's the US, but which country do you think does social media the best?
Yeah, the US are pretty good at it. They invented it. And I think, it's interesting because in France, I remember that very, very clearly. In France, in the early days, there was kind of this, I would say, reluctance to be on social media, because most people, in France are a bit more private than they are here. And so it was like, what am I going to talk about? I don't have anything to say. And my life is private. Why would I post about, going to a restaurant? And the funny, usually the funny satirical joke was, why should I tweet every time I pee? That was something like that. And so I think, it's it's interesting to see that, I've been living in the US for 6 years now, and it makes a lot of sense to me that social media came from here, because there is a different culture of being outgoing and outspoken, and sharing what you do in a very, very organic way, which is a bit, again, like different in Europe. So that's probably why I believe, yes, in the US there is you know a lot to learn.
Thibaud Clement, how can people connect with you the best way?
You can find me on LinkedIn. If you can spell my name, I know it's very hard to spell. You can find me on Twitter at Thibaud Clement, and you can visit our website at loomly.com, and you can shoot me an email anytime. It's just Thibaud@loomly.com. So like I said, I receive and open and read and respond to every email.
So Thibaud is spelled Thibaud at Loomly, LOOMLY.com. Thibaud, it's been a really good conversation. I've learned some good stuff here, and I'm fascinated by this because it's one of the biggest problems that businesses face is how to do well on social media. It's so confusing. It's so changing, but we do need the tools to help be more strategic to do it right. So anyway, I appreciate you being on the ROI Online podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Steve. It was really a pleasure speaking with you. Have a nice day.
All right, and that's a wrap.